with a specific attention to portraiture, what makes a good picture? What makes a good portrait, Steve? That's the question. Really, I'm struggling to get to.
I think trying to get, under the skin of a person, trying to show their personality. I think that's if you can really reveal something about a person. In the case of this picture, what I was interested in was just the way. I mean, this was a young girl who was kind of stepping out there was a festival, and she dressed up in some of her best clothes. But what fascinates me is the way she adorned herself and the way she applied her makeup. It was very popular and very common for them to apply this heavy rouge as and this was like a sign of beauty. I mean, and the hat and the jewelry and all that, and this, she was. We look at her and we think it's sort of a bit cartoonish and maybe over the top, but for her and her culture, this was wonderful. And she looked at. I was in a restaurant and there were a group of these people sitting at another table, and I was looking at them like, wow, this is really. And they were looking at me, dressed in the way I'm looking at me. The whole family turned and was kind of staring at me, like I was this kind of oddball.
But so, how do you get through to the personality though? Because the instinctive thing to do really when you're confronted with the camera is to sort of sit there and smile and look a bit goofy. In my case, how do you stop that happening? How do you get this sort of wistful look that she has and many of your other portraits do, this sort of intense look? Do you ask them not to smile? Is a question.
Well, I think it's there's that initial kind of awkward, embarrassed, self-conscious period where a person is sort of like, well, why do you want to photograph me, and who are you, and I'm late, I got to go. So you have to sort of come in with a certain confidence, a certain. You have to know how the process works in terms of you're going to have a certain limited amount of time. You have to put them at ease. You need to direct how, you can, by asking questions and talking about, so you can elicit a laugh or somebody, there's a famous story about Avedon telling somebody that their dog had been killed. And then they got very sad, or his dog, I don't know if it was his dog or, that will elicit a certain kind of an expression. I don't go quite that far, but you can, if people are a bit silly, I'll kind of turn away sometimes. I'll maybe start adjusting my camera, or I'll talk to my translator to kind of take attention away from their unease and try and slow the whole thing down and make it more kind of ordinary, and just so then once they are more comfortable, then I think more of their personality will start to shine through.
Could you give us a bit of a background about this guy and what he's doing there?
Well, Afghans all need an ID for different purposes, and that's what his principal job is to take a small portrait for identification card. And what they did was they would photograph you as a negative, and then inside that box they would turn the negative into a positive somehow, and then give you the picture. A little bit, I'm not exactly sure how the process worked, but they started with the negative and then rephotographed the negative into a positive in that box.
So it's like sort of primitive Polaroid.
Well, it was like a darkroom inside that box. And he put his hand, you could see the glove where he puts his arm.
And he does the processing with his arm.
Thing, yeah.
There you are, I see.
And there's a little developer and a fixer in that box.
It's absolutely amazing. Do you ever? It's a question I know a lot of people would like to know the answer to. Do you ever feel like embarrassed walking up to people? You must be used to it now. How do you handle that sort of initial meeting with somebody when you want to photograph them? Do you ask permission? Did you ask him permission? He looked happy
Oh
about it.
yeah,
But
I always ask. But you can't
yeah.
really make that kind of a portrait just as a kind of a grab shot. You really need to engage and talk to people and get them to agree to be photographed. But no, I tend to be. I'm actually fairly shy, but you know, you just have to kind of force yourself at times. And once you get into that zone, then you. It's like getting into a swimming pool. At first, it's kind of cold, and you kind of tiptoe in, and then you sort of plunge in and.
Ask anybody. But do you, presumably in the Middle East and different cultures, there are certain kind of worries about photographing people, photographing women, for example. Is that something that you?
Yeah,
you
women are. It's like impossible. There's always, you know, there's always one woman that will agree. Maybe she's a school teacher, or a nurse, or an administrator, or politician. So you can always. There's always somebody, but 99.9% of the time, it's just impossible.
Yeah. Steve, do you want to? What I haven't heard before from you is why you think this is such a great picture. Why it's
Did I say that?
no, but well, maybe I hope you do. But why? What I mean is why you think it had the impact that it had.
Yeah.
Why do you think that over the 1,000 other portraits you've taken over the years that have been published in magazines and on covers, why it was this particular composition and image that made it?
Well, I think it's first of all, she's a very pretty little girl, so we kind of start from that. There's her expression, her kind of is a bit ambiguous. She's not. She's very direct. She's very. There's this attitude. She seems troubled. Maybe there's a bit of, but she seems resilient. She seems like she's persevering. She seems has a dignity. She's unflinching. Her face is dirty. Her shawl's ripped. But yet she's looking forward. She's not, the reality is that she's a refugee. She's an orphan. She's living in this kind of squalid camp, very poor, long way from home, and yet she's still has this kind of direct. There's a genuine, I think, authentic quality to her expression. It's the kind of picture or expression or look that can't be duplicated. I mean, you can't find there's something about the mix of emotions that is just you can't go back and
it's perfect, isn't it?
Redo it.
It's perfect. It tells the whole story there in one face, doesn't it? And she's such an engaging. Well, she's a 12-year-old girl there.
12-year-old, yeah.
Such an engaging kid. You probably saw in the exhibition that for the first time, I think in London, we've been able to, thanks to you, Steve, to exhibit these two pictures next to each other, and this gives you a very different insight into the Afghan girl. It's a very different girl we're looking at here from the other picture, and there's a story about the cover of the magazine, which I'd like you to tell
sure.
these guys, and how did that sort of pan out?
Well, the photographing women is like impossible. So little girls understand that the modesty thing and that women are covered up, women should not be seen, women are in purdah, they're separated and kept, so they want to be an adult. She was covering up her face. Anyway, the teacher in the school explained to her, no, let the photographer take your picture because our story needs to be told to the world because of what's happening in our country. So anyway, I get back to the magazine. There's the other version and this version. The picture editor looks at the one picture and says, oh man, this picture's too disturbing.
So the more famous one.
Yeah, it's too disturbing. People won't want to look at that on their coffee table for a month, it's just too much. And he said this should be the one that we present to the editor-in-chief. But I argued that the other picture I thought was stronger. So we went back and forth, and eventually we showed both to the editor-in-chief, who, when he saw the other picture, kind of leapt to his feet and said, "There's our next cover. You know, that's a great photograph." So that guy was fired later. No, seriously, not because of that, but
he actually was fired.
He was fired, but not because of that, for other reasons, and months later. Yeah.
But and the rest is history, of course.